Schumacher and Villeneuve move over, because here comes Bob. That's this week on Motoring 99.
TSN's Motoring 99 is brought to you by Quaker State Motor Oils, formulated for the vehicles you drive and the way you drive them. And Midas Car Care, the way it should be.
This week's edition of Motoring 99 comes from a field. Hello everybody. Well, you know, this really isn't a field. This is the Shannonville Raceway just outside of Belleville, Ontario. But for our purposes this week, you could call this a field of dreams. Sounds like a good title for a movie, doesn't it? Anyway, what am I getting at and what's this all about? Well, you're about to find out.
AMCI, an independent automotive research consulting firm.
Bob English has always had a passion for cars, so it didn't surprise anyone when he became an automotive journalist about 20 years ago. Which brings us back to the field. Bob is here to write a story about a Canadian company called Race International. The company is the brainchild of Patrick Sherab, a man in love with race cars. Now, the idea for his company came after his first experience behind the wheel of a Formula One.
I decided to invite my son and a couple of guys from the office to go and see this. And I was so happy and so delighted with the whole thing that having a drink at the hotel that evening, my son said, "Dad, why don't we do this for people like you? If you can be so happy, then I'm sure others can. And if you're a fanatic of cars, there's another few million people like you."
The result, for $8,000 American, Racing International will put you behind the wheel of a Formula One car. Patrick was more than happy to waive the fee for Bob English.
Formula One, I think, is the ultimate dream of anybody who's been a car freak. I mean, I can remember clipping little pictures of van walls, BRMs out of magazines and pasting them up over my desk when I was 13, 14 years old out of Sports Car Graphic magazine. And I guess since that time, you know, the dream of driving a Formula One car has always been there. Never thought it would ever happen. You know?
While going into the turn, you're going to lift off the brakes smoothly. All right, and
we start off by briefing them on what is going to happen during the course of the day. During the course of the day, speaking about braking, gear changes, speaking about corners, you name it, smoothness in the control of the car, gradual application of throttles. There's a number of things. After that, we had written a number of exercises that are to be followed in the BMWs, which are, again, brake applications. It is a format whereby we feel during the course of the day, if they follow it, they'll all drive. Every single exercise will be to achieve the goal at the end of the day, driving a Formula One car.
Okay, right now I'm about to take Bob on a drive around. He's going to follow me for about 3 laps where he's going to get a good idea of the proper line on the track, the braking zones, and getting an idea of what you should be feeling in the car, and also give him an idea on how to follow the line by following my car. After that, he will then take over the lead and I will follow him and correct him as we go along on his line.
A little bit of throttle, 1, 2, and keep it on. When they finish the BMWs, and we're comfortable with that, they normally, little discussion again, and we go into the Formula Mazdas, which is a lovely, lovely car, open-wheeled. It's 170 horsepower, it's comfortable to drive, it's like a car, a normal car. So the acceleration is not major, it's just comfortable. And we'd like people to get comfortable with the track in an open-wheeled car with a gearbox, because it's a racing gearbox, so it's a bit different to our normal cars. He's a smooth driver, Patrick, he's a smooth driver. It's all right if he has problems with this gearbox, because then he goes into the other one, yeah.
Following instructions it seems to be what's key to making the day work, because there's too much going on, and if you don't follow the prescribed route through it, you're going to get lost, and it's just not going to happen.
Very comfortable.
Yeah, I think so.
Then why don't we go for it?
Why don't we?
Buckle him up, uncle. Make sure no breath is left. Once we feel, and they've done about 10, 15, 18 laps with the Mazdas, and we feel comfortable, we bring them in, we have a debrief, then we start discussing 650 horsepower engines. And that is where you can see lots of excitement. They've already had about 4 hours working on cars, all the excitement of coming in the morning, and all of a sudden, here you are, the day has come to start driving a car that basically they have not driven. Okay, I like his performance. He was very good at that corner. The acceleration is very gradual. Down to third gear, round the double apex. Very smooth round the double apex, actually.
Up next, the Formula One. We'll be back for that later on as Motoring 99 continues. One of the better upgrades they've added to the TL is the addition of a sequential sport shift. It really does work very nicely, except for one problem. The magnificent Rockies in British Columbia provide the playground for this edition of Test Drive as we take a look at the all-new Acura TL. Now this vehicle is, if you'll pardon the pun, going to cause quite a logjam in the near luxury car segment. It's also going to add quite a lot of spice as people's buying habits and tastes continue to change. When we reviewed the first version of what was to become the TL, we dubbed it the less than vigorous Vigor. The second generation arrived to a fanfare, albeit a small one. Now we have the latest iteration. At long last, Acura has given the car an engine that's worth driving. A new 3.2-litre V6 that's good for 225 ponies and 216 very usable pounds-feet of torque, most of which is ready, willing and able below 2,000 RPM. The engine's flexibility and power come courtesy of Honda's proven VTEC variable valve timing. We recorded 0 to 100 km/h times of just over 8 seconds, which is not to be sneezed at. However, between 80 and 120, the TL really flies and shows its true potential. One of the more significant upgrades they've added to the TL is this sequential sport shift. Now, this combines the advantages of a manual transmission with those of an automatic gearbox. When you're driving along, slip it to the left, pull it back, we go down a gear, push it forward and you go up a gear. Now it really does work very well, except for one thing. When you're in fourth, it has a tendency to flip-flop between overdrive and fourth gear. It shouldn't. If they're going to give you manual, let's leave it manual and do away with overdrive. When it comes to ride and handling, the TL is more than competent. First, the body now has the rigidity the car has always needed. Compared to the recently introduced Accord, it's 70% stronger in torsional rigidity and 80% in bending. This delivers two things: fewer rattles, squeaks and groans, and a good home base for the suspension. Up front are Acura's customary double wishbones and a sway bar, while the rear adopts a new 5-link design that allows passive rear-wheel steering. Toss the TL into a corner and it sticks to the road like you know what to a blanket, and does so without beating you or your passengers up in the process. Understeer and body roll are both benign and well beyond the limits that most will flirt with. The bonus being that the speed-sensitive rack and pinion steering system does a great job of keeping the driver informed, meaning you have a firm grasp of what's happening at the tyre-to-road interface. You know, a traction control system worth its salt reduces both the engine output and uses the anti-lock brakes to control unwanted wheel spin. Now sadly, Acura have opted for a low-speed system. Basically all it does is apply the brakes to the wheel that's spinning. In real world experience, all you're going to do for you in the car is wear the brakes out a little quicker. Stopping power comes from a 4-wheel disc brake setup that features anti-lock, a decent pedal feel and fade-free operation. During the test I needed 115 feet to stop from 80k, and these numbers came despite having just descended a long and very steep mountain. As it stands, the TL at $35,000 is one heck of a car. The drawback is that it has the possibility of being an outstanding car.
If they fixed the transmission, gave it a decent traction control system, it would be one heck of a value for the money. Perhaps a bigger problem for Honda though, it's going to cannibalize the RL sales, and it may even nip a few Accord sales as well. During the intro to our long-term Ultima, I suggested that this car is largely anonymous. The question is why? Is it the engine? The answer is no, because as four bangers go, this is a very good one and certainly better than the competition's. To date, we've been averaging better than 31 miles per gallon, never found it lacking for power, and it's quiet, even under hard acceleration. In our next update, we'll take a look at the interior.
Our Midas tip of the week concerns voltmeters. Many of today's vehicles come with a full complement of gauges, one of which is usually a voltmeter. Now, while it's a nice feature to have, if nobody's ever showed you what a good and a bad reading is on a voltmeter, you may not know how to flag a potential problem with your vehicle's electrical system. Here's the three distinct things you want to look for. Right now, with the key off, the voltmeter is off scale. As soon as I turn the key on to the run position, that's my battery voltage. During the split second that the cranking motor is operating, you're going to see the voltmeter swing to the left or downwards, which is a normal condition, a normal loaded position for the voltmeter. Now, as soon as the engine fires up, you're going to see the voltmeter swing up to a higher reading. And that indicates that our alternator is working. If you have the same needle position between key on, engine off, and engine running, you've got an alternator that's not working, and you shouldn't drive that vehicle too far from home. That's your Midas tip of the week.
For many years, car manufacturers have spent millions of dollars on trying to make their vehicles safer for those inside. Yet unbelievably, many drivers and passengers still refuse to wear their seat belts. With such a problem, police forces across the nation actually have to remind drivers of the tragic consequences.
We're having Operation Impact, is what we're trying to do is once a year we try to make people aware of what's going on in the area, to make people more aware of you should be wearing your seatbelt for safety factors, and we have more officers that are going out and around and making people aware of what's going on. We have a rollover vehicle which was donated to us by GM. We took this rollover vehicle and we put it onto a trailer and we simulate what it's like at 40 kilometers an hour if you're in your vehicle not wearing your seatbelt. It's fairly graphic. Usually what happens is the mannequin that's inside will fly out. We do two demonstrations. We do one with the mannequin hooked up with the seatbelt showing what will happen. It still moves around. We also have a baby in a baby seat. It's not hooked up properly. Most people we're finding nowadays are just taking the baby seat, putting it right into the vehicle without hooking it up properly, and it also demonstrates that. The other one is the seatbelt convincer. It goes approximately 8 kilometers an hour and comes to a dead stop. And I'll show you what the impact is like at 8 kilometers an hour.
What is it? I mean, you meet people, I'm sure you find people who aren't wearing the seatbelt. Why do some people still resist wearing their seatbelt? Is there an answer?
I don't think there is a real answer for that. Some people will talk and say my uncle or my brother or somebody I know would have lived if they were not wearing their seatbelt because they would have been thrown. This is not true. I couldn't say that everybody will ever wear all their seatbelts all the time. It would be nice. It'd make our job easier at times.
Let me get this straight. You're trying to save people that are too stupid to wear their seatbelts? Later on Kenzie's Corner.
Well, Bob English is getting some final instructions before climbing in behind the wheel of one of these Formula One vehicles. Now, both these cars competed on the Formula One circuit in 1994. This one was driven by Christian Fittipaldi, the one behind me by Johnny Morbidelli. They both had Ford Cosworth engines. They're 3.5-liter V8s, 650 horsepower. Now, I know one guy who just loves racing. In fact, Formula One is at the top of his list. Isn't that right, Bill?
Wrong-o, Brad. Matter of fact, I think you had the list upside down because Formula One's pretty near at the bottom these days. Bores me to tears. As many of you know, I'm a NASCAR fan. This week I want to talk about power steering systems and the typical symptoms that you get when you've got a problem with your steering system. This van is a classic example. When I start it up, you're going to hear an awful noise when I turn that steering wheel. That's the power steering pump cavitating or taking in some air bubbles along with the oil. That's because the fluid is low in this steering system as a result of a leak. Now, power steering systems typically use a belt-driven hydraulic pump. It's belt-driven off the engine, robs a little bit of engine power, not a whole lot, in order to create hydraulic pressure to boost or assist our steering system and give us that effortless feel. As a matter of fact, a lot of today's NASCAR stock cars use power steering. Even though it robs a little bit of engine power, that effortless steering reduces driver fatigue in the long races, and they find it to be worthwhile. Now let's take this van in, put it on the hoist, and we can see where the leak is in the system. Now remember that this van is 10 model years old, and you'd expect it to be pretty dirty and grimy underneath here, and it is. We've got a little bit of rust, lots of grease around all these grease fittings, so it's going to look damp here. But what we're looking at is this glistening wetness that you see right here. All this is evidence of our leak. Now, because these areas are just greased, we wouldn't expect fluid to be dripping here. We've got to look a little bit further, and as we go up further to the power steering pump, we can see, well, there's a drip just about ready to fall, and our reservoir, which is this tin canister on the back of the pump right here, has some pinholes through it. It's rusted completely through, and the fluid's seeping slowly through it. Here's our new reservoir. You can see the area where the filler cap goes on right here. On the back, our return hose port, and our high pressure hose is going to come out here. I flip it over, and the steering pump itself, the old one, is going to be loaded into this new reservoir right here, and there's a couple of seals and O-rings that get replaced as well. Now this thing doesn't look like much, it's just a little piece of tin, but it's $135, and believe me, it's no do-it-yourself project. You're going to have to take the vehicle into a mechanic to get this replaced. It's a fairly extensive labor operation, and it's pretty dirty too. Anyhow, a couple other things we should note. Most steering systems only hold about 1 liter of fluid, in some cases less than 1 liter of fluid. The steering fluid is not designed to be consumed during normal operation, so if it's low to the point of you having to top it up, you've definitely got a leak in that system. Now, if the leak is fairly minor in nature and it's not getting on the belts and pulleys, you may be able to just top it up and limp the vehicle back to the mechanic to get it repaired. Don't let it go forever, because if you leave the steering pump low of fluid long enough, eventually you'll burn out the pump. A little splash of fluid will usually get it back to the shop. Now, on many newer vehicles, they also use the power steering fluid to boost the brake system or give you that power assist to your brakes as well. So when you're low on steering fluid, you may notice that the steering gets stiff and you get that howling sound, but you also may get a choppy or uneven feel to the brake pedal as well, because you're losing the booster assist there as well. Something that you've got to get fixed fairly soon. Till next week, I'm Bill Gardner for Motoring 99.
Boy, some of that crash footage earlier in the show was pretty brutal, wasn't it? But you know, the latest numbers are in, and 91% of Canadians now wear their seatbelt. Highest percentages in Quebec, the lowest in the Northwest Territories. Those hard rock miners and their pickup trucks, what are you going to do? But you know, I'm beginning to wonder if all the money we're spending on that last 9% is really worth it. Maybe those police should be out chasing left lane bandits or people who change lanes without a signal. I mean, surely those 9% know by now that a seatbelt is the best way to save your life. I'm beginning to wonder if maybe they don't want their lives saved. I mean, we know a large percentage of car fatalities are suicides, we just don't know how many. We've just spent $1.5 million in Toronto putting a fence over a bridge so people won't jump off it. If they want to find a way, they're going to find a way. And you know, there's another aspect to this. Maybe some of those people are just playing in the shallow end of the gene pool. Maybe we should just get them out of the pool. Let Charles Darwin's theory take its course. I'm Jim Kenzie.
Is he okay here? putting on the helmet, we're ready to go.
We're back at Shannonville Raceway. Bob English in the seat of the Formula One, and he's about to realize a dream.
Okay, 1, 2, 3.
It's not that much different internally than the F3000 car, but you're overawed. You're wedged into this tiny little dart of a car. There's your thighs, your legs are actually forced together, and your outside of your thighs are up against the bulkheads, and there's not much room elsewhere either. And you're sitting in a car with 650, 80 horsepower behind you, and if you've never experienced that, which I hadn't, it's a very daunting proposition.
He's controlling his gears very, very well. Now let's see him going through there. Natino, have the yellow in hand, at the back of your hand. Well done. I would like a yellow.
This program, and it took a little bit of time for me to get my head around it too, is not a racing program. It's a program that allows you to experience one of the most awesome vehicles on this planet in, I would say, damn near almost complete safety.
And the fact that you see someone that came in the morning driving his car here, and at the end of the day they're saying, I'm going to sleep with a t-shirt that says I drove a Formula One. That's all I like to hear. And see, that means we've achieved our result of the dream.
Now that Bob English is off the track, Patrick Sr. and Jr. feel it's safe to take their Formula Ones for an afternoon spin. Now, you probably heard that crude statement, he who dies with the most toys wins. Well, if you're a racing fan, you're already giving these guys the checkered flag. That's it for now. We'll see you next week as we continue to bring you more stories about cars and the people who drive them.
We've had some hard-working people here. They've made some money. Now they're going to spend some money, and they're having some fun.
TSN's Motoring 99 has been brought to you by Quaker State Motor Oils, formulated for the vehicles you drive and the way you drive them, and Midas Car Care, the way it should be.